This is Chris Wheeler, and I am with Les Norman. Les, I'm really excited to talk with you today. We've got so much to unpack here. You've already kind of shared with me some of those cool stories that have helped shape you as a believer, as a father, as a husband, and I just can't wait to dive into all of that and your journey. Les, you played for the Royals for a little bit.
A couple of years,
Yeah, so if we could just start from college, I think that'd be really helpful for the listeners to really understand, how you came into being today and how you view life. You were sharing so many amazing things with me about your junior year. Let's pick up the conversation there. That's a year that you said I was starting to really come into my own as a baseball player. Can you kind of start the journey there for us?
Sure, and thanks for saying that. It's funny when you look back on your life and see the plans you think you had, but then you get to this point and you turn and look behind you and you see where God has brought you and the things He's kept you from, protected you from, and put you through. So that's really cool. Like in high school, a little bit of a late bloomer. So I had talent to go to college and got a scholarship. I actually played football too my freshman year.
Oh, cool.
But when you're returning punts and kicks at 160 pounds, you should probably do something a little different.
Yeah.
And even though it was NAI school, I was still, St. Francis was still a good football school, and I was getting pummeled.
What's St. Francis close to?
It's in Joliet, Illinois, so it's like 45 minutes straight south of Chicago, right up I-55 there. And grew up in that area, small town just south of that. So my junior year, we were coming into our own. My sophomore, actually, it was my junior year. Was an All-American, first team All-American, and hit well, had great statistics, and healthy, playing every day.
Sure.
And I was told by a scout who had come that you're probably going to get drafted in maybe the top 14 rounds. Now, understand, even though I was having a good statistical year, I really wasn't on much of a radar, at least as far as I knew. But that year, we had a pitcher named Don Peters, who our sophomore year, he was in my group, my age group. So our sophomore year, he was throwing probably 84, 85, which that's your average, that's your average college pitcher. Decent breaking ball, but you're still going to get hit around if you live over the middle of the plate. Well, that summer, he decided to go lay bricks and carry bricks with his dad and came back throwing 94. just by a summer job, this guy gained 10 miles an hour on his fastball.
All kids out there listening, go work as a brick mason, labor.
There you go.
My family's kind of call to Kansas City is brick masons.
Oh, wow.
So we've got like 4 generations of bricklayers. And so we believe that we've helped kind of build almost like 20 to 25% of the homes in Kansas City. So my great-grandfather was a bricklayer and passed that down. And my dad was in it for a little bit and got out of the business pretty early on, worked for Evergy for 35 years. Yeah. But
it's a great story. It's great history.
It is cool. And as my summer job, I would often come up to Kansas City. We were in Wichita. I would come up to Kansas City and I'd work with my uncle. And he'd pay me $10-12 an hour. And I hate this saying to this day, but my dad and my uncle, because my dad would help out too on the weekends, just for like extra cash. And he'd be like, yell mud. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to go mix more concrete. I just constantly doing that for 10, 12-hour days.
Sure.
And I just remember getting so strong, though. And I came back my sophomore year to Johnson County. And similar to this guy, the guys were just like, whoa, like, what happened to you? Like, you got swole.
Yeah, all big.
Because I got to, coming out of high school, I was like 170, but pretty skinny,
That lean 170.
Yeah, I was almost 6 foot. I'm not 6 foot. I'm like, I'm like 5'11" and 3/4. But when I came back, I was 195.
Wow. That's 25 pounds of yoke right there.
Yeah, but I was working out a lot, lots of heavy squats, and like after work, I'd still work out. So it's like double time.
Right.
So that's kind of interesting.
Back when it didn't hurt like it does now.
I haven't worked out for like 5 years now. It's like, my wife's like, you want to go on a walk? I'm like, yeah, we're officially that couple now.
That's okay. You got a big family. You got to reserve your energy, conserve it for the little ones.
That's right. That's right. So back to you.
So you get it though, with the brick mason and just watching that guy. Well, every time the scouts would come out to watch him pitch, because he was on the draft board as top first round, second round pick. Yeah. And he ended up going as part of that year. The Oakland Athletics had the 4 aces, which was Todd Van Poppel, Dave Zancanero, Kirk Dressendorfer out of Texas, and then Don Peters was the 4th one.
What year are we talking about right here?
That would have been, 90.
Okay.
Would have been 1990, awesome. I believe, yeah. So Boston ends up drafting me because I'd get 3 or 4 hits, hit a home run every time they came out to see Don pitch. Yeah. And I thought, well, if they're not looking at me, let's just go have some fun. There's no pressure. I'm going to play my way into the spotlight instead of trying to keep myself from falling out of the spotlight. You know, it's like trying to do something to not fail versus just getting after it and going. Lessons that we've all learned, right?
Oh, yeah.
So Boston drafts me, but they had offered $2,000 to sign, 23rd round versus those top 14 rounds.
Big money.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was everything.
Yeah.
But they had told me that there was a floor, which this was their mistake. They should never tell a person because you just don't know unless that person has control of it. And he said, well, you're probably going to start at 50,000, maybe somewhere up of 6 figures. And for me, that was the last year of my education, because back then they didn't put the rest of your education within your contract, because the signing bonuses now are school plus whatever. And so my math was, part of it was noble. I'm going to finish school. You're going to pay for it. And the other half was, well, there's an auto dealer by my dorm and there's a silver Mustang soft top I want. So that'll take care of both of them. And I'd even gone by to see it, like, pretty soon, if I could just hit a few more home runs, you're mine, baby. And I should have figured it out. It was a used car lot anyway. I should have got it, but I didn't get the hint.
Okay.
So yeah, they drafted me 23rd round, $2,000. So I said, no, I'm just going to go play summer ball, and ended up winning like a triple crown in the collegiate summer league, Central Illinois Collegiate League, CICL.
Oh, cool.
It was down in Fairview Heights.
Nice.
Yeah, just near St. Louis there. And they kept coming back every week with a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And eventually the offer was $30,000. And the scout said, this is your last chance. We don't have any more money than this. And my thought was, well, the only reason you're coming up with $28,000 more is because the person in front of me didn't sign. And then that person didn't sign. So I'm not your first choice in the 23rd round, or however you look at it. And I was really prideful. My mind wasn't in the right spot. So I turned it down.
This is the Red Sox.
This was Boston Red Sox, yes. And
historic franchise.
Fenway.
You're kind of, not in a degrading way, but you're kind of throwing it back at them a little bit of like, I think I might be worth a little bit more.
Yes. And even before I realized that I wasn't on the radar, my thought was, I'm still going to play pro ball somehow. If I don't get drafted, I'm going to show up somewhere. And I mean, to be honest, at that stage of my life, in 20 years old, I thought, I am kind of God's gift to the sport.
Yeah, invincible.
I'm helping put this college on the map. I'm the best player on the team statistically. I've got the strongest arm. I'm the most blah, 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 on and on.
Sure.
Really elevating myself. But at the time, I didn't realize I was doing that because I was so insecure. I mean, my dad was an alcoholic and abused our family. And one day I came home from school when I was 12. I said, Mom, where's Dad? She said, he's not here. I said, well, I know that. You guys aren't fighting. There's no screaming. She said, no, he left and he's not coming back. And I never saw him again. And he ended up passing away.
Wow.
10 years later, I found out. And so my mom allowed this, but I instantly started lashing out, reaching out. So by the time I got to my college years, I was protecting myself around my talent was protecting me. I couldn't let anybody in. I couldn't have meaningful relationships, didn't trust men, father figure type people. Sure. Even my coaches, they were probably the most, because I played for the storied Gordy Gillespie, the winningest college coach of all time. I mean, this guy's, he had passed away a few years back in his 90s, and I'm just an amazing man and taught me a lot.
Where'd you play for him at?
St. Francis.
Oh, he was the coach.
He was the coach then, because he was at Rudy. He was Rudy's high school football coach.
Okay, so he was pretty young at this time then.
Well, he was in his 60s.
Okay,
if you call that young, because back then we don't think it. But again, he coached till he was 90. Yeah. So I said no thanks. Went to play, and the scout looked at me and said, "Son, I'm not sure. Maybe the Red Sox are your type." Or is the team for you, because you seem like your perspective is a little bit off. So we're going to rescind that offer. I just gave him the look like, you're not rescinding anything. I'm choosing no to you. I'm saying no to you. You're not saying no to me.
Yeah, it's like, you didn't fire me. I'm firing you.
Yeah. It's not me. It's you. It's the breakup, right? And so went and played. Had a great summer league. I'll show you. And won a triple crown in the summer league. It was like the MVP of the summer league. And went back to school. But this time I had been drinking, and my drinking after my senior year started to really increase. Started to get, I didn't know this then, but as I look back, I could really start to see that those were the signs of depression really starting to set in. The anxiety, wasn't going to class much, barely staying eligible. And in the fall, I never really played fall ball my first year of football, but I just didn't like fall ball. I wanted to rest. But this time I played, and as the captain, and voted one of the top 10 players in the nation, our college being picked to come back to the World Series, and I was the highlight player. I got kicked off the team. It's just anger, throwing equipment.
What did that conversation look like with your coach?
Well, he had warned me all the time, and I'd noticed that the players around me were starting to distance themselves. And there was a freshman first baseman at the time, and we were having an inter squad, and my roommate was a senior named Alex Fernandez, not the former pitcher for the Marlins, but he was the catcher, and he was just a great guy, very chill, very calm. And I popped the ball up, and I went to throw my bat down, but I accidentally hung on to it and flipped it behind me, and it hit him right in the side.
Oh, man.
And he stood up, and he gave that look like I'd never seen before. And we were really good friends. He was just a patient guy. And I ran down like, Alex, I'm so sorry. And I got to first base. Well, the ball dropped. I should have been at second, but I was so mad at myself for not getting a hit. And there was a first baseman, a freshman named Dan Samuelis, and he was a big guy, but very low-key and would never say anything to anybody. And I got to first base and put my head down and shaking my head. And he said, man, I know I'm just a freshman and you're supposed to be a leader here, but you got a bad attitude. I can't stand playing with you. I hate this experience with you. Wow. And then the next guy up made the out. Practice was over, and Tony Delgado was our coach at the time because Gordy had moved on to Ripon College before he'd come back to St. Francis. And he came across and he said, Lester, you're done. You know, and that great gravelly voice of his. And there were even a couple guys on the field that even started clapping right in front of me. But wow. I was pulling the team down. And I did have a bad attitude. But the bad attitude wasn't really the persona that I was creating of I'm all this and I'm selfish. I was, but on the inside, that jersey was my mask. I was hiding the pain of a lost childhood, the pain of abuse, the pain of not having a father around. Yep. And so tail between my legs, I walked away and stayed away until spring.
What was going on in your mind when you hear the first baseman make those comments to you? Mm-hmm. You said it just so quickly, like it sounds like it's still in your mind. Mm-hmm. You can remember,
never forget it.
Yeah, you can remember the players clapping. You know, you went from this All-American, the guys love you, to, man, we're just not even sure if we want this guy on the team. Like, what's going on in your mind and your heart of your brothers that you've played with for 3-4 years? Now they're kind of against you.
Yeah. There were a couple guys that knew a little bit about what was going on and never turned their back on me. But in that moment, they didn't stick up for me because they shouldn't have. They knew they were real leaders. I was playing like I was a leader. Right. I wasn't a good leader at all. And in that moment, I remember thinking when he said it, my first initial thing was I wanted to fight, but it was almost as if I physically couldn't speak because he was so right in that moment. It's exactly what I needed to hear. I put my head down, took a deep breath, walked and got my stuff, got my car, went back. But I remember thinking in that moment when he said it, my world is unraveling. I am falling apart, and I don't have anybody to tell. Wow. I don't know who to go to. I don't know who to talk to. And so I just retreated even more. I went deeper in, and now without the jersey to wear, I hid in my dorm room, didn't hang out with a lot of guys, and I was 20, but still able to get alcohol and was drinking constantly. It really was unraveling, but I still put the persona. I'd go to the parties and all that, and alcohol tends to numb your senses a little bit, and you put your inhibitions out there.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear your story, Les. My parents went through a divorce when I was 16, and I wasn't like all world or anything like that. But my freshman year, I had a chance to play varsity, and our school was considered in Wichita one of the top premier schools in the area. We were ranked in the state, competed for state championships. We had guys go to Wichita State all the time. And so
you're getting ready to start as a freshman a little bit.
Well, not start, but like be on that level.
Sure.
Of like, hey, we'll bring him in as a reliever or second outfielder. We'll maybe take him to the postseason with us. Which that's kind of cool. But by my junior year, there were these really lofty expectations of like, hey, Chris is going to be a dude for us on the mound.
Yeah.
And I was throwing like 84, 85. So I'm not like lighting the gun up yet, but I could really spot stuff at that point.
Good control.
Yeah.
Now, if I remember correctly, there's a pitcher that you look up to in the major leagues by the name of Greg Maddux,
Greg Maddux, that's right.
It sounds like with a little bit of movement, you were kind of emulating that guy.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I really looked up to him. Do you know Brad Holman? Do you know that name? So Brad was my pitching coach.
Nice.
Really just an awesome guy, and he taught me so much. And he taught me more about, how to truly be a pitcher. the craftiness and knowing counts and when to throw a change up and when to do this and to pitch guys backwards. While other guys were just out there throwing, I felt like, hey, I could do things differently.
You're giving me nightmares because I didn't do so well against cerebral guys like that.
Yeah.
That knew me better than I knew me.
No, it's true. And it was cool. And in the summers, for whatever reason, I always did extremely well in the summers because I was with guys that I knew and I felt comfortable and always felt confident. And that coach had coached me since I was like 7 years old. So there's a lot of rapport and trust, right? Of a relationship.
Sure.
Well, my parents had moved me to this new high school and it was really hard. And then they go through this divorce. And, your dad in your life a lot of times is like your superhero.
Yeah.
And when they went through this separation for almost a year and a half, 2 years, it just wrecked my whole world. And I remember some things you had said, just kind of masking, and so I would just show up at practice and just go through the motions. I could not put any energy or focus on baseball. Like, it's just like I was there.
Yeah.
All my emotions, my heart, and everything I was thinking about was about my parents, that I had lost that.
Right.
I was living with one of my best friends and their family for a year as well. So this whole thing got pretty nasty. And I remember my coaches talking to me and just like, what happened? Yeah. Kind of like you, Mitch, said before the show started, of like, you were hitting, close to 400. And then the next year hit like the 280, 284.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it's your eyesight.
Yeah. They sent me to the optometrist a couple times to try to figure that out.
Yeah. And that's kind of like how my year in high school was a little bit. It was like, something's wrong. Like, do you need a psychiatrist? Do you need a counselor? It's like, I need everything right now.
Right. But when your foundation is taken from you and it's not your fault, it's your place of safety. And we've got this plan that, we all have this need we want to feel valued. We want to feel loved. We want to know that everything's going to be okay. Yeah. And in a world where, men shouldn't think that way. Let's stick our chest out and we're in control. But even as a young man, I was 12 when my father left, and you're 16 when your parents get divorced. Your foundation's rocked, and so when we can't trust that anymore, we won't either have a foundation or we'll put things in there that are counterfeit. Oh yeah, and so it rocks your world.
Yeah, 100% does. And I even thought about quitting baseball for a while. I had these lofty aspirations of going to college and playing at the high level because most of my friends were going either to KU, they're going to K-State, or they're going to Wichita State. Yeah. There was an era of baseball in Wichita where everyone went off around kind of my age. So I'll be 39 in March. Matt Beatty went to KU. His brother played at KU. There was a Josh McLaughlin. He went to Georgia. There was Deke Scram, played at Oklahoma State, smashed all their records. Mike Pelfrey. Pelfrey dominated at Wichita State and pitched for the Mets. Like, those were the guys we were all playing together with and playing against, And so you kind of alongside of them, maybe I'm not that level, but you still think like I have a path, And so what was interesting was in high school, I became so emotional in my mind that I could not perform. But my safety net was my summer team.
Yeah.
And it was just like, for whatever reason, I just had the rapport and the relationships. And so I didn't even think I was going to play baseball in college. I didn't think I had a path for that because scouts would come to our game, but they weren't for me.
Right.
They were for all the other guys.
Yeah.
And, but in the summer, there was a Royals, what'd they call it? It was like a Royals scouting day, and I got invited to it. And it was at the minor league baseball field, and I tried out for it. And I was like, I'm going to get back into this game. This was like my senior summer.
Okay.
And I light the gun up, and the scouts are like,
that brick masonry job.
That's right. That's right. I was doing that in high school too. Yeah. They were like, I was like 89 to 91.
Wow.
And they're like, you're going to get drafted too. I'm thinking that. And I didn't. But I had all these offers starting coming in like super, super late because I was a real late bloomer. I was small, tiny, frail frame. But then that summer I started to develop, fill out, and I was starting to light it up.
Yeah.
But my parents got back together.
Oh.
So they're together to this day. They took a sabbatical for a couple years.
Hallelujah, though, that they're together. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and so I took that into college, played at Johnson County. But it was
good baseball school, by the way.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It was not that level when I was there. We were like 35, 36 wins, which is decent. But now they're like 45, 50 wins, top 5 in the country. Yeah. They produce some real guys. But it took me about 5 to 7 years to work through that relationship with my dad before I could say, like, I know who I am and I know who you are. I know what our relationship looks like. But it's just interesting as a coach, when I got into coaching, and I know I'm kind of going all over.
No, you're great.
But
I love it.
It really helped me see people and players differently, because I think we often look at a kid and we say, well, you're just not producing. Yeah. And that's why in real estate, we talk so often about numbers, like numbers matter. And they do. They tell a story. But that story is often beyond the number, right? Yeah. I told our leadership team this last week, they were talking about, sometimes it's so quick to go from hero to zero, right? And I remember kids that I've coached, they're batting like 380 in the spring season, and they have like a few bad weeks and they're back to like 250. I'm like, well, you're not that 250 hitter. You're the 380 hitter. But oftentimes it was something going on in their life, a breakup. Yeah. Mom and dad had a big fight. I had a fight with my dad. I'm going through anxiety. I have depression,
a sickness of a family member or something.
There's so much. And oftentimes it's not what you see in front of them of the stats. It's not like they're not just doing the habits anymore.
Right.
It's internal. It's with their heart. Hi, this is Chris Wheeler, owner of the Wheeler Home Team. Our desire is to be the most compelling real estate company in Kansas City. We seek creative solutions to combat a rapidly changing market. We know that now, more than ever, sellers will need our help to get top dollar for their home. That's why we created Seller's Corner. List your house with the Wheeler Home Team, and we'll have you on this podcast, Paris of the Plains, to tell potential buyers about all things you love about your home. Then our team will post the link to your podcast episode right in your listing so that it can go to hundreds of potential buyers. List your home with us as we seek to enrich Kansas City through real estate. Call me at 816-562-9940 or check us out on our website, greaterkchomesearch.com. So I'm so glad we can have this conversation, because
absolutely,
as you were sharing that, I was just like, man, that just brought back a lot of fresh memories for me emotionally.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there.
There is. And of the many wonderful lessons that I learned from playing with the Royals, when I met Mike Lasardi, who was both the Chiefs and Royals chaplain, and eventually the Royals chaplain, and he since passed a couple of years ago, but probably the biggest influence in my life, used to always say that no matter what your situation, what you think you know is not always what's really there, because, and then here's the quote, behind every face, there's a drama unfolding. Yeah. And you just don't realize there's always something right there, and there's always something in here that's going on with somebody. Yeah. So try to get to know people and understand. Don't always read, it's like, you've got some good books behind you, and I don't know if you're a reader, I'm a big reader. Yep. But I don't just read the cover and then read the back and read the review. Right. I got to dig in, or else it's not going to change my life, and then I'm not going to be able to use it to change other people's lives. And so that's a great point. We got to get to know people. I love even though you're not hitting 380, you're still that 380 hitter. Yeah. Just going through some stuff.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
Good. Yeah.
Well, I want to get through the rest of this first half with your story of the baseball side of things. So you're at St. Francis, you get drafted by the Royals. They'd offer you $2,000, and kind of walk us through that and get us kind of caught up from there to the minors to, man, I did get a play in the Royals. Organization.
Yeah, I look back, it's such a blessing, especially going through the difficulties of it. So I did get drafted, and now you had made a comment where you always had that summer team you could go to. And for me, after I got drafted by Boston, it was the summer team I went to. That was my escape. Now I can shield myself from the disappointment that you gave me. Oh yeah. But then going back to St. Francis and having that really bad senior year, I went from being a first team All-American to not even being a runner-up, honorable mention all conference of 10 teams. Wow. And so that was a shock. It was, especially, with the guy that had built this ego with a house of cards, of course. Yeah. And so I end up getting drafted. I asked the scout, what's your offer? And they said, offer, we're going to give you $2,000 to sign. And I said, the sense of humor, that was Boston's first offer that I snubbed my nose at, right? Yep. And I said, can you give any more? And he said, son, if you don't sign this contract, you're not going to play professionally at all. And I said, let me see the pen. I signed it, and we went out there. And then when I went to short season, that was my escape. Now I could get away from hitting 284. I could put that behind me and now start new. And then the ego started again, started to kind of sneak back in. I kind of forget where I came from, but I really can realize as I look back at that, I was really bowing up and trying to push my jersey out to really put this layer up. Coaches, again, father figures I don't trust, understand. And even in batting practice the first day, I'm seeing a kid 5'8" from Florida hit 420-foot bombs in batting practice with a wood bat, and I can barely, it was like it was like a stick of dynamite going off when they would hit. When I would hit, it sounded like I was hitting it with a wet piece of paper. You know, it wasn't the same. So they drafted a right fielder. I wasn't starting in short season, hitting 169. Got my average up. A couple injuries as an outfielder, a couple outfielders, and so I got my average up to 245. Worked really hard with our manager, who was also hitting coach, a guy named Tom Poquette. Played for the Royals and the Red Sox.
Awesome.
And so it was the first sign of humility in a long time for me, because I realized if I keep going like this, I'm going to play myself out of the game. I'm not getting out of short season. Forget those big league talking games I'm playing. And so I learned, and I was a student, and I came early and stayed late and worked, got to 245, like I said. But then I was rounding third, and I knew it was going to be a close play at the plate. We were playing in Bend, Oregon against the A's.
Okay.
And I was coming in, like if you're the catcher, I'm coming in and realize he's jumping up and over this way.
Oh, man.
And so at the last second, I kind of roll and try to get my hand around. Now, it was a good slide. I was safe. But the problem is that in my senior year, I had slid into third on a triple and subluxed my arm, but then it popped back in. So once you do that, unless you surgery to tighten it, it starts to go like that, and it's a loose joint. Well, as soon as I landed, I tore it pretty good. I tried to fake it, tell him I was okay, but I was sneaking 16 to 20 Advil a day just to take the pain away. A couple games later, we're in Everett, Washington, still on that road trip, dove for a ball down the line, separated again, but this time I tore my rotator, my labrum, my biceps tendon rolled up, part of my pec rolled up. I mean, I just destroyed it and knew that it was.
This is your throwing arm?
This is my throwing arm's here, but it's my lead hitting arm.
Okay, yeah,
so you can't get in there, and I mean, I couldn't even lift it. So I destroyed it, and I knew surgery time. I'm not even hitting 250, and even though I was on a good streak, I was worried about getting released. And so all the other things, the thoughts you go through, it fast forwards me to the moment where I was sitting in the Royals clubhouse as the Eugene Emeralds was the short season team. I was sitting there, and in Eunice, when you're playing games on Sunday, whether it's in college or professionally. And we'd have a chapel service, or we'd come and have a speaker come in. And Bobby Meacham, former Yankee shortstop, was our first base coach.
Cool.
And he would always come and invite us to chapel. But I went to chapel because I'd raised so much hell for 6 days. On Sunday, I wanted to clean myself back up so I could get right after it again on Monday. I mean, that was my thought. That's what I knew. Alcohol was another mask. It was a way to numb the pain.
Got it.
And so I had sat in the clubhouse, and I remember thinking, and this is real. I literally thought, I have worshipped baseball, myself, females, anything that could lift me up. My family it didn't seem like my family was calling me. The newspapers, they still had newspapers back then, right?
Yeah.
And they weren't asking me interviews. The public address announcer, none of that. They didn't want anything to do with me. And I remember thinking, I can't believe this game's going on without me of all people. And so I had decided at age 22 that day, it was a Sunday. I said, somehow tonight I'm going to find a way, and I'm going to take my own life because baseball had been everything, and I thought that I had lost it all. And right at that moment of thinking that, I just love how God works. Right at that moment, Meach came walking in, and he had to walk past my locker to get to his, because I don't know if he'd forgotten his scorecard or something, but he's supposed to be out there coaching. And I just blurted out in tears, Meach, there's something different about you, and I got to know what it is because I'm dying. And literally, I was dying. I don't know if he got that, but that's what I was saying. So instead of going out to coach, Meach sat down and shared the gospel with me. I hung on to that for a couple of days. They took me on the next road trip to monitor my arm before sending me home for surgery. And I gave my life to the Lord. Yeah, so
Awesome.
It was amazing. And so had the surgery, came back to spring training, was healthy and feeling good, but my perspective changed.
Oh, yeah.
And it was all of a sudden, it wasn't about the Norman on the back. It was about the Royals on the front. And I realized, God, you've given me this whole time, this has been a gift. And I'm thinking that I am the gift to the game.
Right.
You have given the game as a gift to me.
Yep.
And for the first time, I think in my life, I played for pure joy, not just the joy when you go 4 for 4 or when you strike 3 guys out and come in a save situation. So a couple outfielders got hurt, and Tom Poquette lobbied to take me to full season Appleton, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Low A ball, right?
Cool.
So we get there, and I'm the 5th outfielder on the team. And my thought was, if they want me to sell hot dogs, if they want me to chase foul balls, if they want me to keep the book, I'll warm up the outfielder, I'll warm up the pitcher. I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm just happy to have this jersey. As long as you'll let me have it, Lord, I'll take it.
Yeah, that is a complete 180 for you.
It was, yeah. Trying to picture what everybody thought of me and lifting myself up now, it wasn't what everybody else thought. I want to honor the Lord in it. And I wasn't a perfect human being, but it was a different perspective. And so a couple outfielders get hurt, and now I'm thrust into the starting lineup before the season even starts because we got snowed out the first few days. And, you know, the end of March, early April in Wisconsin, there's still snow, and it's freezing every day. So I get in the lineup, and all of a sudden, when you go to the plate with joy, when you go onto the mound and you're playing, and you're so joyful and comfortable, like, I'm going to put it right there with this movement at that speed, and you're not going to touch it. And that's what happens. And so there were guys throwing 90, 95. And to me, I was so comfortable and so in tune with mechanics and just not worrying about the end result, not fearing failure.
The game has slowed down quite a bit.
The game slowed down. And by the All-Star break, I was hitting like 410 playing every day.
That's awesome.
And so I'd made the All-Star. 8 of our guys on that team. I mean, that was Joe Randa was on that team, former Kansas City. I mean, we had a lot of guys that ended up. Shane Halter ended up playing for the Royals a little bit and the Detroit Tigers. Some pitchers on that team. Danny Maselli was a reliever for the Pirates for a lot of years. And we had 8 guys just off that team that had made the All-Star team, let alone throughout the league. But instead of going to the All-Star game, I got promoted and skipped high A and went straight to Double A.
Yeah, it's a big jump.
It's a big jump.
So you were in Wichita?
Well, it almost. Okay. Double A was Memphis at the time.
Oh, okay.
I'm older than you think I am, although I appreciate that. I'm going to be 54 in a couple weeks.
Okay.
So yeah,
you do have a young look.
Well, it's the bald head, you know that. So yeah, it was amazing, and I got promoted and went to Double A and thrust me right into the starting lineup and didn't miss a beat. Went 4 for 4 the first night, and I was scared. Trust me, I was nervous.
Yeah.
So the fast version was the first full season was 92. So halfway through the season, 92, I'm going to Double A. The next season, 93, start in Double A, stay there the whole year, but was the Royals Minor League Player of the Year, was MVP of the All-Star Game in Double A, was on the Today Show with Willard Scott, the former weatherman for the Today Show.
Dang.
And yeah, it was a great time.
And are you still playing with that sense of joy that you talked about? Had anything changed? Because I can remember, you know, as a believer, I came to Christ at 11. And obviously you kind of go through seasons of growth and maturity and setbacks and, you know, the whole thing.
Yep.
But even as an athlete, I've always struggled with my pride, you know, pumping my chest out there of, it's like, yeah, Lord, you gave me a gift. I don't want to waste it, you know, and you kind of build your own self-esteem up. But like, what did that look like for you going through that dynamic of a pretty new believer? You are kind of spotlighted now. You're having
back
a lot
in the
of
spotlight again.
Yeah, you're having a lot of success. I think that's really hard for Christians, especially new in their faith, to get back in that spotlight so quickly. Yeah. How'd you handle that?
Well, it's a great question, and I would like to think that I was a pillar of faith, and I wasn't. So, like in college, my junior year, it was all about me and all that. Well, as I started to learn how to play the game on a professional level, I started to learn the lessons from the coaches and the game. You know, when I was in high school, I was a sophomore, and we won a state championship playing on a team full of seniors. So, and you know, you're playing younger. You know, you were the freshman getting some looks. Your sophomore year, you started to play. Right. And I think that helps you. If you're younger, but you have the ability to play with older guys, you can learn the game really quick. Yep. And that helped me get a little bit fast track. I matured a lot on the field. Sure. I learned that it's not about if you've got a really strong arm, and I could throw over 100 miles an hour release point from the outfield, but if it ends up in the stands, what good does it do, right? So I learned so much about the game, how to play, but as I started to increase my abilities and my smarts of the game, the faith thing, I started to kind of pull back a little bit and started to tap into the alcohol a little bit again. Really? I eventually in the minor leagues got the nickname Chappie. because they said that I was so intense as a player that they always thought I was mad. I'm like, I'm not mad. I love my life. I love getting to play this guy. Are you kidding me?
That's funny.
But I get it. And to this day, my wife says you got the number 11, which is these 2 lines in my forehead right here. Like that means that I'm looking like this. So the next year after the minor league player of the year was 94. I made the AAA team and wasn't ready.
Where was AAA at the time?
AAA was Omaha.
Okay, so
it was
still
Omaha.
there.
Yeah, still there. But it was at old Rosenblatt Stadium right next to the zoo. Shared the parking lot.
Yeah, my wife is from Omaha.
Oh, okay.
She's been more College World Series than I have been.
Oh, wow.
I think she said she's been to 17 College World Series seasons.
Wow.
Like, that's just what you do
Yes.
when you're in Omaha.
That's right.
And I've
It's a
only
big
been
deal.
to 2 now. So
That's the national spotlight. When you live there, you go. Yeah.
it's a cool place.
I was getting eaten up, and I didn't get along with the third base coach very much. He didn't like me. And so
Well, that's a good place to be.
yeah. Oh boy. So I got sent back down to AA again. And if you think about it, the numbers weren't good, but now I can see that the Lord was saying, oh, you think that you control this? After I gave this to you, now you want to take back control? Okay. Obviously you have some growing to do. Let's see how you handle this. Yeah. And then I get demoted. And now I'm going back to that first baseman in college that's saying, man, you have a bad attitude. I don't even want to play with you. You shouldn't be here. You're not a leader. And I started having those thoughts again. And so I had to refocus again. And then in 95, then now I'm back in AAA.
Okay.
But this time the perspective is different.
How old are you at this time?
At this time, I think I was 95. I was 26.
Okay.
26 at the time. So still a little bit older. Nowadays, you can be in the big leagues at 18 to 20.
Oh, gosh, that's crazy.
It's unbelievable. And those guys are legit, too. I mean, Bryce Harper, those guys, Soto from the Nationals are crazy, and now the Padres. So in 95, the perspective changed. And I'm like, you know what? I've been here. Just play hard. Just play hard and enjoy it. And each stop, even though whether I was living out my faith or acting like a fool at times, the Royals had chaplains in AA. They had a great chaplain named Woody Gallion. To this day, still a good friend, and we still stay in touch. We had a great chaplain in Omaha. There were a couple different ones. Yeah. And so I would still stay faithful in chapel. I would still hang out with them and try to keep that faith close to me, even though I'd still want to go wander off and have to prodigal my way back in. But God is faithful, and he knows our hearts, and he didn't let me get too far. So 95, the perspective gets good, and I'm hitting 380 in AAA. And there was this long, I can tell you another time or whatever, but the coaching staff and the Royals brass were in town, and they set me up to make me act like I was in trouble. It was their way of calling me up to the big leagues. I got set up, and crazy thing, yeah. And ended up going for a month of June in 95. Brought back down after the one guy got off the disabled list, and then a September call-up. Okay. And then, So
this is right after the strike.
Yes, 94 was the strike.
Okay, David Cohn. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of my favorite pitchers as well. I've read a lot of his books. So it was David Cohn and Greg Maddux were my guys.
Yeah, Kansas City dude.
Yeah,
David Cohn, right. Yeah. So then, I came back in 95, played, and that's where I met my wife. Well, at the time it was, and that is a whole nother episode of how God got that. It is unbelievable. I'll tell you after. I'll give you the short version. So we met and then went back home, 96, go to camp and make the team out of spring training, and played the full year in 96. But that would have been the last year I played. And I was still playing, but took me off the roster, went to a couple different teams.
So you were about 26, 27?
I was 27 in 96.
Got it. So I'm always curious, this guy, this childhood friend, Deke Scram, he played for Detroit for a really long time. He made it to AAA, and he didn't advance above that. He did really well there, but he just stayed in it for a really long time. I think he just retired maybe like 3 years ago or so. Wow. Maybe 4.
You guys the same age?
So maybe he retired 5 years ago. Okay. Yeah.
So mid-30s, though, about 34, 35?
I mean, he stayed in it. So for you, what made you say, I'm ready to hang this up? Because that's always hard for an athlete.
Yeah. At the 2000 season, after 96, again, they'd taken me off the roster, so I went to sign with the Cleveland Indians. I had a chance to be in the outfield with Kenny Lofton and Manny Ramirez. So can you imagine? I'm in right field.
That's awesome.
And then there's Manny Ramirez in left field, and then Kenny Lofton's in center field. Well, then right after I signed, they signed Juan Gonzalez,
Okay.
Chad Curtis, and Roberto Kelly. So when I found that, my agent called and I said, "Hey, where's their AAA again? Because that's where I'm going to be." And it was Buffalo, New York. We ended up winning a AAA championship that year, so it was fun. Yeah. And then I free agent again. I signed with Texas. Had a chance, but was the last guy cut in spring training. 25-man roster. I was number 26. Yeah. Cut. Played the whole season in Oklahoma City in AAA. Had a good year. Hit 300. Then back with the Royals, 99, 2000. And after the 2000 season, I talked with my wife. We'd been married. We got married February 1st of 97. Just had our 26th anniversary. And I said, "What do you think about this? You gave up a career as an FBI profiler for me, and I'm dragging you all over the minor leagues. And now it's time. We want to have kids. And you know my story. I'm not raising kids from the road in a baseball field." Right. She said, "If you want to have kids, I'll support you, but I think it's probably time." And so I went in that day at the end of that season and said to my manager, it was our second to the last game of the season. I said, "I retire after this game. You can bench me tomorrow, but I want to start a family." And we prayed about it. We had been praying about it, but I've never had more peace. I never looked back on that and said, "Well, I wonder." It was the exact right decision. That's awesome. We knew we were ready, and it was peace. It was time to move forward.
Yeah, that's cool. I think that's pretty rare, though. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of players, like you look at Tom Brady's recent, challenges of like, "Hey, I'm going to retire. I'm not going to retire." The challenges in his marriage too. But it sounded like you and your wife had some really thoughtful conversations around this. It was revolving around our family and having children. You prayed about it. And you felt like, man, I walked away at the right time.
Absolutely, I did. Again, when you marry your best friend, and I'm sure you can relate, when you marry your best friend and you're able to have the foundation of your faith, God is your foundation, it's not about your decisions back and forth. No marriage is perfect. Ask my wife. She'll tell you. Yeah. She hangs. I'm still waiting for her trophies for 26 years being married to me. But it makes decisions easier because you can pray together on what God wants versus the back and forth of you, me, and the selfish pride doesn't have to come in as much. It will come in because we're humans. But when we prayed about it and I realized that, we want to start a family. And I don't know what I'm going to do after baseball. But when I was with the Indians in 97, the manager who's with the Blue Jays now, I think, but Mark Shapiro was the GM. Yep. And he came to Buffalo one time, and I was a DH, so I didn't go out as early as everybody else did, and we're at home. And he said, "Les, can I talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Mark, say anything you want, man. You're paying me." And by the way, we talked about this earlier. Cleveland pays their minor leaguers really well, even back then. Yeah. I mean, you're talking instead of like other teams paying you $2,000 a month in AAA, they paid $10,000 a month in AAA.
That's why they've had a little bit more success.
Exactly. People are drawn to that organization. So he said, "Look, I just want you to know, I know you're hitting 300. And I know you're leading off for us, and you have almost 20 home runs. You're a leader on this team. You work hard. You start every day. You're a catalyst, and people look up to you. But I got to be honest with you, you're not getting called up. We're not going to do it. It's a paper trail. We've got young prospects. This is a feeder team." And I was hurt, but he said, "But here's what I want you to know. When your career's over, you're going to call me. I'm going to put you in low A ball in your manager material. If you want to, I am grooming you because I think you'd be an excellent major league manager for our organization. And even if it's not, for another organization. So if you want to continue your career when you retire, you let me know." I called him after the 2000 season. And I said, "I remember our conversation, but I want to say thank you, but no thanks. I can't do this and raise my family from the road. My dad left when I was 12, and I'm still scarred from it. And that was 25 years or 15, 17,
Your
20
priorities
years.
had just drastically shifted.
God had shifted my heart into his priority versus mine."
Yeah. That's awesome. I think that's a great time to segue into break, and we'll kind of lean into the second half of your story after, life after baseball, what that looked like, what that looked like for your family. So thanks for being with us for the first half.
Yeah, you got it.